War in Ukraine enters its fourth month. US President Joe Biden has announced a U-turn on fresh weapons supplies to Kyiv. In an opinion piece published in today's New York Times, President Biden announced that he has decided that he will send a long-range weapons system to Ukraine, despite saying on Monday that he wouldn't. Kyiv is providing assurances that the system will not target any site outside its own territory. Biden also reiterated that NATO is not directly at war with Russia and that the bloc does not seek open conflict with Moscow either. President Biden calls President Vladimir Putin's actions in Ukraine outrageous, but he insists he is not trying to oust the Russian leader from power in the Kremlin. Russia's invasion has sparked two major global crises. Food supplies from Ukraine and energy supplies from Russia are on the line. Biden says he's working with US allies to work on the fallout from both problems. He also said that the US will help European nations reduce their dependence on Russian energy, giving America's partners a chance to speed up the transition to a clean energy future. On the way forward, Biden sets out America's goals, writing in the paper that we want to see a democratic, independent and sovereign Ukraine with the means to defend itself against further aggression. The US president ended his op-ed saying that Russia did not expect the West to pledge unity with the Ukrainians, yet that is exactly what occurred. And in a direct message to President Putin, Joe Biden said the Russian leader expects that Ukraine will waver in the months to come. If he does think that, he is highly mistaken. So let's cross now to WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani, who joins us today from the streets of New York City. Susan, good to see you again. Let's start with that opinion piece that Joe Biden has written for the New York Times. And I wonder if in broad terms, you think he really has clarified his aims and ambitions in ways that American voters will understand, even if they don't necessarily agree with his plan.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is for certain, President Biden understood that he does have a messaging problem, and he had to take his message straight to the American public, to the public in general, before going ahead and sending these rockets to Ukraine, despite the fact that perhaps, as you mentioned, many Americans are wondering whether or not it would be necessary or not. You know, this op-ed, and this is a second op-ed that President Biden has penned. This one was in the New York Times regarding Ukraine. And then to provide some context, the second op-ed regarding inflation was penned in the Wall Street Journal. Really comes at a time when NBC reported that the president is agitated and frustrated because any comment that he makes, or for the most part, is being pushed back by White House administration officials, and he has to constantly remind them that he's president. It also comes at a time when there are mass exits happening on the West Wing. So this was very important for the president to lay out his policies, whether or not they, sway the American voter or not for the midterm election. As you rightly noted, this really does have a lot to do with the voter. We'll have to wait and see. But poll numbers, and historically, when it comes to poll numbers, usually where the president stands right now is where the president and his party stand come November midterm elections. But the op-ed really, it came out and spilled out what President Biden wants to send, not only a message to the American people, but perhaps to Vladimir Putin in light of sending these rockets. He said he's not looking to directly engage with Russia. He doesn't want regime change. But he also didn't really say he wants Ukraine to win. Again, he said we want to see a democratic, independent, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine with the means to deter and defend itself against further aggression. Again, again calling for negotiation and diplomacy as the best path forward. And then he also did not outline what the consequences would be if Russia decided to retaliate or use nuclear weapons, although he said it would be very unlikely. So we'll have to wait and see how the American voter decides when it comes to this op-ed. But yes, it does come at a time when I think the president did understand he has a messaging problem.
To be fair to those White House staffers you mentioned who keep having to walk back the president's comments, I mean, this is the president who on Monday declaratively insisted he was not going to provide these long-range rocket systems to Ukraine, and then on Wednesday wrote an op-ed for the New York Times saying that he is going to provide them to Ukraine. I mean, the Ukrainians have provided assurances that they won't use them to strike targets outside Ukraine's borders. But, you know, that's a pretty brittle situation, isn't it? One missile ending up on Russian terrain and the whole thing starts looking very different.
Right. And also, let's not forget that Russia specifically said that the delivery of these kinds of rockets are a quote-unquote red line. They are a means of provocation. And on the other hand, you know, then you have to consider that perhaps this is after Western officials really came to the conclusion that Ukraine is suffering a lot of losses in the Donbass region, and it needed, you know, this kind of weaponry. But the question then remains, you know, if Biden and if the United States really wanted to supply these weapons to Ukraine, then why didn't it do it in the beginning? You know, those questions come up. But you know, directly answering your question, the Defense Department, for what it's worth, said that we do know that the delivery of these rockets carry a risk. We don't believe it's high risk, but it is a risk that we're willing to take. And you know, in a situation where Ukraine, again, the president doesn't outline whether or not the ultimate means is for Ukraine to win. Again, the question not only among the American people, but a lot of lawmakers here is, well, you know, at what point does the delivery of these weapons then become, you know, something constant for months to come? And I think that op-ed sort of painted the picture that this war is going to last at least for months.